Hello and welcome back to the channel. After a visit to several places in the province of Lazio, from which there are still a couple of places to see, today again we return to Rome, where we have a tour of the gardens of Villa Borghese, to then meet the famous Mouth of Truth, stroll through the neighborhood of Trastevere and end the day in the Vatican City, where you will visit the Vatican's museums and the fictional Sistine Chapel. Follow us on our trip, and if you like our videos, do not forget to like, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. We begin our second visit to the city of Rome in Villa Borghese, one of the largest urban parks in Europe, with an area of about 80 hectares, and in which the part of its abundant vegetation, which invites to stroll through its wide avenues. We will also find art and history. Here you can enjoy the National Gallery of Modern Art, the Borghese Gallery, with works by Tiziano, Raffaello Caravaggio, or a villa of the Medici family, of the many that they owned. After passing by the National Gallery of Modern Art, we cross the Arc of Settimio Severus, whose statue of the Roman Emperor we see on the top, surrounded by Poth prisoners. The arch is the perfect entrance to the pond of the Temple of Esculapio, an artificial lake that is the habitat of various animals, such as turtles, ducks or swans, and in which you can rent small rowing boats to enjoy a walk through its quiet waters. In the center of the lake is a small artificial island, where the Temple of Esculapio arises, an Ionian-style temple built between 1785 and 1792, and which houses the statue of Esculapio, the Roman god of medicine and healing. We continued our walk through the wide avenues of the park, carefully not to be struck by tourist transports. And on the so-called Magnolia Way, we met the 4th edition of the Chocolate Party, which was held here from 21 to the 23rd of October, and could admire the mastery in the art of shaping chocolate. The park, as we said, is immense with an extension of 80 hectares, and it is a pleasure to get lost in its streets, from which you will enjoy its nature and its art. We end our visit on the terrace of Belvedere, where we will have a great view of the city of Rome. From the gardens, we go to the Piazza del Popolo, which we already visited our first day in Rome, and which, as we said, has 2 twin churches, which if you have time deserve a visit. We continue this tour on foot through the streets of Rome, and next to the Via del Corso, we find the Colonna di Marco Aurelio, which celebrates the victories of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius against the Germans. And step by step, we reach the banks of the Tiber, very close to the Palatine Bridge. But before we get to the Church of Santa Maria in Cosmedin, where the mouth of the truth is located, on the other side of the street, we find the so-called Boerio Forum, which in times of the Roman Empire was an area dedicated to the livestock market. Due to its location, this place suffered several floods, but the two temples of Hercules and Portuno are still preserved. The oldest of the two temples is dedicated to Portuno, the god of the rivers and ports, and the second to Hercules the Victorious, and is often mistakenly attributed to Vesta, given its similarities to the temple of Vesta located in the Forum. Next to us is a beautiful fountain, the Fountain of Tritons, built in the early 18th century, made of travertine marble, inspired by the Bernini Triton fountain. We cross the street to the Basilica of Santa Maria in Cosmedin, where the famous Mouth of Truth is located, and as you can see, it is often quite crowded with tourists. Its origin is not known, whether it was part of a fountain or a lid of a sewer. In the Middle Ages, the myth of the Mouth of Truth was born, and supposedly the medieval Romans saw in the sculpture a lie detector for those who committed acts such as adultery or perjury. We go inside the basilica, built in the 6th century, which received its name from the Greek adjective kosmidion, which means beautiful, thanks to its then abundant decoration. Today it has virtually no ornaments, although it still preserves some beautiful elements, such as the soil mosaics, the bishop's throne or the choir. And one of the main treasures that is preserved in the church is the glass relic that keeps the skull of Saint Valentine, patron of the lovers. Next to the porch of the basilica, we can see a Romanesque bell tower from the 12th century. Leaving the basilica, we draw attention to a large extension of empty terrain, which are the remains of the Circo Massimo, built in stone and marble, and had a capacity for 250,000 people, and here the car races. From these imposing ruins, we cross the river Tiber by the Palatino Bridge to the Trastevere neighborhood. In ancient times, the Trastevere was considered a very humble area and apart from the city of Rome. And there's the name of Trastevere, which means the other side of the Tiber. Although much has changed over the years, Trastevere is considered the most charming neighborhood of Rome. You can walk through its streets and enjoy its colors, its atmosphere, or its restaurants, where you can find typical Roman cuisine. Its central core is the Plaza de Santa Maria de Trastevere, where apart from a beautiful fountain, you will find the Basilica of Santa Maria de Trastevere, which we intended to visit, but we could not do so, as its interior was celebrated to a funeral. If you are lucky to visit it, you can admire its mosaics from the 12th century, and inside you will find 22 columns from the Roman era. We follow our walk along the Trastevere, which, as you can see, is quite frequented by tourists, even in late October. From this beautiful neighborhood, we head to one of the most emblematic and visited places in Rome, and that is nothing more than the Vatican City. The Vatican City, which is officially a state, has an area of 49 hectares and approximately 800 inhabitants. we access the St. Peter's Square, which is part of the Vatican state, and which is a remarkable example of Baroque architecture and urbanism, and a place of everyday encounter of thousands of Catholic faithful from all over the world. The square is divided into two parts, the first next to the facade of the basilica and the second with oval shape, surrounded by a total of 284 columns, and in whose center is the obelisk of St. Peter, with a height of 25 meters, although with the base and the cross reaches 40 meters high. From St. Peter's Square, we head to visit the Vatican museums, the entrance of which is located on one of the sides of this mini-state. Well, we are already inside the Vatican, although fortunately, being the month of October, it does not take long to enter, and where the first thing that draws our attention is the beautiful helicoidal staircase, designed by Giuseppe Momo in 1932, and that is a copy of the Bramante staircase, designed in the 16th century and which is in the Museo Pio Clementino, but is not open to the public. From this beautiful staircase, we access the so-called Cortile della Pinacoteca, the courtyard of the Pinacoteca, which is a terrace from which we will have a panoramic view of the so-called square garden. We return to the interior and we enter the impressive Pinacoteca. The Pinacoteca consists of 18 separate rooms, in which works of art dating from the 12th to the 19th centuries are exhibited. At first, these works were distributed by different apostolic palaces, but in 1932, by the will of Pope Pius XI, the current building that houses the Pinacoteca was built, which now has 460 paintings. As we say, the Vatican Pinacoteca consists of 18 main rooms, in which the works are placed in chronological order according to the school to which they apply. The first room is dedicated to the Italian artists who lived in the medieval era, the second is devoted to Giotto, while in the third are the works of Filippo Lippi and the Blessed Angelic, surrounding the later rooms paintings of the 15th century. The most important and visited rooms are Room 7 with works by Perugino, Room 8 with works of Raphael, Room 9 with works by Leonardo, Room 10 with Venetian painting, and Room 12 with works by Caravaggio. We have for example Saint Geronimo of Leonardo da Vinci, the Transfiguration of Raphael, the Descent of the Cross of Caravaggio, the Virgin of Foligno of Raphael, the Martyrdom of Saint Osmo by Nicholas Poussin, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden of Wenzel Peter, the Retable of Stefaneschi of Giotto, the Annunciation of Raphael, the Vision of Saint Helena of Veronese, or the Coronation of the Virgin of Raphael. After enjoying the visit of this impressive collection of works of art, we pass to another of the many museums that make up the Vatican museums, the so-called profane Gregorian Museum, where the findings of the pontifical archaeological excavations carried out in the last decades in Rome and its surroundings are exhibited, and to these materials also add many of the antiquities that until then had been accumulated in the depots of sculptures, documenting different moments and themes of classical art from ancient Greece to the late Roman imperial period. Great importance is given to the sculpture of the Roman imperial era, documented with important works from public and private buildings and monuments, as well as portrait and iconic sculptures, and beside them there is an important collection of funeral sculpts, such as urns, altars, or sarcophagi. But not only the only museum in this area. Here you can also enjoy the PIO Christian Museum, the Ethnological Missionary Museum, or the Philatelic and Numismatic Museum. We go back to the helicoidal staircase, with caution when descending not to go to the exit of the Vatican museums, as it would be impossible to enter again. So you always have to pay attention to the indications. We go to the so-called Cortile della Pigna, called so, because in it there is a colossal bronze statue of almost 4 meters high, also called the Pignon, and that was discovered in the Middle Ages in the baths of Agrippa. Here we find the so-called Pomodoro sphere in the center of the courtyard, formed by concentric spheres in motion, and in which through a breakage you can see one sphere inside the other, as well as various gear, a metaphor of the destruction by the bombers during the Second World War of the native village of Au author Arnaldo Pomodoro. Next to the Cortile della Pigna we find the Pio Clementino Museum, one of the most important, and that was also the first of all, founded at the end of the 18th century in 1771 by Pope Clement XIV, being later expanded by his successor Pope Pius VI. The most prominent place of the Pio Clementino Museum is the so-called Cortile Ottagono, popularly known as Cortile del Statue. In a center marked by a small fountain, illuminated by natural light, the courtyard is surrounded by a series of arches that give rise to a unique sculptural collection, such as the torso of Belvedere or the Apollo of Belvedere. Here we find the curious animal room, with works related to nature and hunting, which intend to recreate, so to speak, a stone zoo. We continued our visit by the Pio Clementino Museum, and we arrived at the so-called Round Room, a room not so well known, but that for us was one of the most beautiful. It is a circular room, with an impressive dome that simulates that of the Pantheon of Agrippa. In the center, as a counterpoint to the dome, we find a huge vessel, which the ancient Roman Empire decorated some public place. Around it we find several sculptures, depicting Hercules, Claudius or Minerva. And here we go to the room in the shape of a Greek cross, which became the entrance hall of the museum, and whose interior is dominated by the presence of 2 large sarcophagi, as well as 2 Egyptian-style statues in pink granite, dating from the beginning of the 1st century, and flanking the door of entry as guardians. We climb a few stairs from the previous room and reach one of the sides of the so-called Gallery of the Chandeliers, to which we will not be able to access directly from here. To access this gallery, the tour will be extended to other rooms, showing the heritage that the Vatican has been collecting over the centuries. And after this visit to the varied room, we arrive at the large Gallery of the Chandeliers, which, as you can see, is attested by tourists, and which takes its name from the monumental chandeliers of marble, combined with colorful columns also of marble, and in which the beautiful decoration of the ceiling is highlighted. Nearby we find the so-called tapestry gallery, with masterpieces woven by hand, representing historical, religious or mythological themes, and those that each tapestry in itself is an artwork. From here we pass to the impressive Geographic Map Gallery, a huge gallery of 120 meters long, and that leads us to the Sistine Chapel. The walls of the gallery are covered with 40 geographical maps of different regions of Italy, as well as with the main cities, and on the ceiling adjacent to each region, there are representations of the religious events that took place there. The peculiarity is that some maps appear to the visitor at the reverse, because in the 16th century, it was not a convention to place the north at the top of the map. And now, from here we access the Sistine Chapel, the most famous, known, and emblematic place of the Vatican. In this room it is not allowed to take photos and record with video, which we do not understand, because if it is done without flash, they do not have to affect the paintings. In the face of this prohibition, we only have to do the recording, so to speak, in a furtive way. So the quality of recording is not very good either. Currently, the Sistine Chapel is the seat of the conclave, the meeting at which the College of Cardinals elects a new pope. The fame of the Sistine Chapel is due mainly to its spectacular fresco decoration, especially the Buddha and the wall behind the altar with the Final Judgment, two works performed by Michelangelo between 1508 and 1512. It is one of the chapels of the Apostolic Palace where the Pope's official residence is located, and originally served as the chapel of the Vatican fortress, and was known as the Magna Chapel. Its name comes from Pope Sixtus IV, who ordered its restoration between 1473 and 1481. During the pontificate of Sisto IV, a group of Renaissance painters, such as Botticelli or Perugino, were called to perform work on the chapel. On orders of Pope Julius II, Michelangelo decorated the chapel's vault. All the frescoes on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel are the work of this brilliant artist, who took about 4 years to finish the work, thus creating a magnificent artwork. Years later, between 1536 and 1541, he painted the Final Judgment on the altar wall for Popes Clement VII and Paul III. And in the Sistine Chapel we end our visit to the Vatican and Rome, but not our journey to Italy, in which we still have a lot to enjoy.